Today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. I'm going to be giving a recap because I was making an episode and there was an error. So yeah. So in the last episode we saw World War II starting. As for some fish, kind of dumb I know. We saw the reforming of France, but it's still under the control of Rome. And we saw the collapse of the European colonies. And I also did change China's color. But let's get into this episode. So we're gonna be speaking about China, we're gonna be talking about China. China does not have good relations with Taiwan, and Taiwan recently threatened China on joining their alliance, and China is not very threatened by this. So instead of just ignoring it, they decided to declare war on the Taiwanese country. Chinese troops entering into this area, and just after 2 months, just after 4 days, they take over this piece of land, and they start their invasion into Taiwan, immediately taking over the capital, destroying the government, taking it over, and Taiwan eventually does surrender. So let's take a look at the peace treaty. So in this peace treaty, we can see that they fully annexed Taiwan. Now, India is infuriated by this, but they're facing their own problem. I don't really mean problem, because they're actually going through some good thing. Because over here, we can see a bridge is being built between their Sri Lanka territory and their mainland. And well, they finished the bridge in the year 11,000. And now with this bridge finished, trading is now very, very popular over here in Sri Lanka and this southern tip of India. But now something weird is going to be happening as we see spies from the Blue Country and the Arabian country. They're going to be going into the Red Country as they feel they're planning to create some ship that's going to sail through this gap secretly, go over here, go on through this bridge, go over here, through the Bering Strait, over here into the Philippines, where they are planning a secret mission with India. Now, this is completely false, and their spies ended up dying over here in the capital as they were captured by guards. This went on the newspaper, and this newspaper reached around this much of the world. Any country outside of this did not get it. So yeah, Arabia now blames this as a war crime, and they're going to be declaring war on the Red Country. Now, they are in a circle alliance, and the circle alliance is against the tilted square alliance. So what do? They decide to join the tilted square alliance, furthering India's influence into the Middle East. But now let's take a look at actually World War World War II. So the first war is going to be starting over here in Scandinavia, but before that, we see British, Swedish, and Norwegian troops fighting it out. But remember, I forgot to say, but this is actually owned by India, the island. So they're going to be sending naval troops down from here. And then we see the first push into Norway as we see Scandinavia, as we see Sweden moving into the country. There's another country that's in another alliance, that being Finland. Finland does not have good relations with Norway, neither does Russia or Sweden, so they're not going to be teaming with anybody besides their alliance. They're going to be invading into Norway. They decide to avoid these northern parts, as it's way too cold, even though they're familiar with the environment. Russian troops do that as they're familiar with it. Another push-in is over here in Russia, as we see huge push-ins, into their Balkan territory. They even start to make it to this little sea right here. mega push-in is going to start over here as we see Ukrainian troops enter into Scandinavian territories, but not just Scandinavia, as well as Central Europe. Not just Central Europe, but another one, that being Bulgaria. Now they send the most troops to Bulgaria, as Bulgaria is the closest to their capital, which is located right there. So they're going to be pushing the most troops into here. And the country pushing into here is going to be Albania, once thought to be Bulgaria's ally, now being betrayed by their best friend, is now going to start an invasion. Greece will also be joining, but not on the side of any alliance. They're just going to be, let's just say, neutral. But it won't just be these countries fighting. We're also going to see the Dutch, and they're going to be declaring war on French. The French Union was just united a couple years ago, but they don't really care, as they're going to start their invasion into France. And it goes really, really good, as they plan to take all of this territory as well as this British territory. They're going to be moving in, and France does eventually surrender. So let's take a look at this peace treaty. And in this peace treaty, we can see that they get all the land that they actually did want, and now they can start their invasion into Britain. I will be changing the capitals later in the next episode. Now they're going to start their invasion of the Brits. They're going to be invading, and with naval troops and army troops over here, they won't be doing any pushback, and they end up getting all of the territory with absolutely no resistance. Also, these weren't declared wars, they just put troops into the country. But another country the Dutch will be invading is Central Europe, as they start sending troops over here from their border. The Central Europe stands for peace, and they end up getting this amount of land. Now, Central Europe is kind of cooked. Now let's take a little look away, as we can see India pushing into China, but only a teeny bit, as China has a bigger population density over here, and has more army over here than over here near the capital. Korea is also going to be sending troops. Also, Triangle Alliance, Circle Alliance, their allies, Tilted Square, and they're not allies with anybody. Same with the Square. But now let's take a look at America, because Iberia isn't sending any troops into anyone. Instead, they're doing their own thing. As they're going to be colonizing Florida, as they are now done being scared. Now they fully colonize it. They're also going to be expanding over here in Central America. And finally, over here, we see the Cyan country with Chinese supplies. They end up pushing a little bit into the country. Over here, see the red country moving troops into the blue country, circling tons of troops until blue team troops arrive, push them back to their original order. Over here, we can see the orange team starting to invade into Persia with, again, Chinese supplies. Speaking of the Chinese, we can see them pushing more into India, and the rivalry just gets bigger with Korean troops arriving. And we see a huge naval battle over here in the South China Sea, as well as one over here in the Black Sea. Now, let's take a look at the Dutch. The Dutch are actually not going to be supplying square lines. Instead, they're going to be supplying the triangle lines. And they're going to try to ally with them. Speaking of the triangle lines, Russia, their biggest member and the creator, is going to be pushing more into the Balkans, getting even more territory as they move in. Finland is now going to start their invasion of Sweden, and they're going to start to push more into Norway. Speaking of Norway and Sweden makes even more pushbacks over here, and they even start to meet up, blocking off Finland from any more invasion, and they actually start to invade them. Over here, we can see Ireland is now done, and they're creating a new republic, the Irish Republic, against the Brits. And they're going to be taking a look all of Northern Ireland. But that's the end of this episode. Thank you.